Okay, let's look a little bit about the history of classification. It kind of began, remember, it began with Aristotle, and he was first classifying plants and animals. Okay, and it wasn't until about 1,000 years later that they actually began classifying things, plants in particular, by their medicinal purposes, how they're helpful in medicine. So they began to separate like herbs and shrubs and trees, really depending on their shape. And then again, they also classified them by their medicinal value or how much they'd be able to help us. But it really wasn't until the age of exploration where this really provided a lot of different discoveries that really created a need for classifying things. People were going out and they were discovering, and let's say they were in Spain and they went over to the Latin America area. Okay, you're going to see palm trees. You're going to see a lot of tropical things you would not necessarily see in Europe. And this really began to make people think, wow, there's a lot of things out there that we have not seen. There's a lot more species of plants and animals, organisms, etc. So a gentleman by the name of John Ray, who was a British naturalist, which means he kind of studied plants and animals, he was the first one to kind of coin the term, and that's kind of name the term, species. And he did this to describe a specific type of organism, a specific kind of organism. That gets as specific as possible. There is only one species of a certain type of organism. So he really began to pilot that whole program. Now, studying under him was a gentleman by the name of Carolus Linnaeus. I'm going to spell that wrong. And he studied under John Ray, but he actually became known as the father of modern taxonomy. He was the one that really piloted a lot of the, he started discovering more things, and he really started to organize them based on their specific characteristics. Now, it says he began to set up the category of genus and placed Ray's category of species into it. Okay? Now, he identified all living things by these two categories, by their genus and their species. And this naming system became known as binomial nomenclature. In other words, this became known as the scientific name of an organism. And it was named by their two parts, by their genus and by their species. Now, if you take a look at this chart, this is just an example of how classification works. In the chart here you'll see 7 layers of classification. There are actually 8 beginning with the D, which is the domain. There are actually only 3 domains to classify living organisms, and that is bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. Okay? Then it goes down to kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Now, a little mnemonic device to help you to remember this is found right here at the top. And you can come up with whatever one you want, but it stands for, did King Philip come over for green soup? Standing for domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Now, what Linnaeus came up with was a 2-part naming system using the genus and the species to name organisms. Okay? This is, again, known as the binomial nomenclature, and you use the genus and the species. Now, these are in Latin, so they kind of look funny, and so if I were to ask you what's the scientific name of an organism, in this case, it looks like they're classifying the grizzly bear, you would say the scientific name or binomial nomenclature of a grizzly bear is Ursus, that's the genus name, horribilis. And I'm not going to be able to fit that in there. I-L-I-S. Sorry. Ursus horribilis. So you would take the genus and the species name. Now, what level has the most organisms? Well, that would have to come from the domain, since that is the largest grouping of organisms. And of course, what level has the least members in it? Well, that would be the species, because there is only one species per organism.